Yeah, we're live. Hey, everybody. I have my new star back, Rashidah Grinage of the Coalition for Police Accountability. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I am in fighting trim. I don't want to fight, though. I'm not fighting anything. I'm in great shape. Hey, Police Commission, uh, first of all, there's been a lot of developments. I should say congratulations on taking a major step toward a ballot measure that will give the police commission more independent um, room, if you will, to maneuver. And your thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, once again, history is on our side. The timing, of course, of this ballot measure coming forward now uh, or this week, as opposed to last month, made quite a seismic change in the political dynamics, right? So let's just say we had the wind at our back. That I don't think any council member was inclined to go against the will of the people under these prevailing circumstances. So that worked in our favor, and now it's a question of what happens in meet and confer, and whether any changes are inserted that make the ballot measure unacceptable.
Do you think
So
that'll happen?
it can happen.
Hmm.
Happen. So we have to wait and see what comes back from meet and confer, and to see if there's any poison pills that have gotten injected, or if anything important has been deleted, just as equally problematic. And then we'll see where we are.
Just so for those people who are just trying to catch up, explain to them why this is important.
The police commission was authorized by 83% of the voters in 2016. So it's an amendment of the city charter that establishes a police commission. Unfortunately, we could not anticipate the reaction of the administration when it passed. And as a result, what has happened is that the administration has prevented the commission from essentially hiring and supervising its own staff. And so um, they've been affected in the way that they can perform their functions, because they're not able to oversee and supervise their staff. They didn't have their own independent attorney, which we thought we had taken care of in Measure LL, but he interpreted it differently and said it conflicted with the other provisions of the city charter. And even though the city council passed an ordinance to remedy all of these things, the city refused to implement the ordinance. So we had no choice but to go back to the voters. So what's at stake here is that they have their own independent staff that works for them and is supervised by them. The same with their legal counsel, which would be hired by them and have nothing to do with the city attorney. And additionally, there are provisions that have to do with accessing records. Measure LL said that only the director of CIPRA, the investigative agency, had access to personnel records. That is now different in this amendment. This would allow not only the CIPRA director, but also the investigators and the commissioners in closed session to have access to personnel records, which is very important. And there's another provision which says that even if there is agreement between the police chief and the CIPRA director about discipline, under certain circumstances, the police commission could still have a discipline committee to review the findings under certain circumstances. So that is an improvement also, and something that's really necessary.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Say again?
I said, go ahead. I thought you were going to add something.
That's it.
Okay. What are your thoughts on these calls to defund the police?
Well, it's a catchy phrase. And obviously, for a long time, this police departments throughout the country have been a sacred cow that no mayor or city council has been willing to challenge. I think certainly the time has come to redefine what the police department's duties are and to determine to what extent they can be offloaded so that funding can be redirected to agencies or other institutions that are better able to perform those functions. And one of them clearly has to do with mental health. Others have to do with low level interpersonal problems like neighbors in some kind of conflict, or even some low level family issues that are not violent, that don't really require someone with a badge and a gun. Not only don't require, but are better left to more appropriate responding personnel, people who are trained in de-escalation, in problem solving, in getting folks to take a step back. And not only that, but who are tied into a referral system so that there can be aftercare beyond the initial response. Because what often happens is that you have repeat calls to 911 from the same parties over the same issues because they've never been resolved. There's been an immediate response, and sometimes an unfortunate one where the person winds up being psychiatrically evaluated or arrested, or worse, but the underlying issues that gave rise to the incident were never addressed in any ongoing fashion. So that is certainly something that I think a lot of police departments are looking at. We are in Oakland looking at that. In fact, we have a proposal that we are about to bring to the City Council that does exactly that, that establishes a non-police response to certain 911 calls that do not require someone with a badge and a gun and can be better handled by other personnel. And that would allow the police department to focus on really serious violent crimes, to reduce their response time to those, and to leave these other matters to people who are better equipped to deal with them and actually can do it less expensively. So that could be considered a form of defunding, where money that was going to police responses to this sort of incident is now going to be offloaded to a different agency and performed at a more reasonable cost. That I think is one of the things that I think a lot of police departments are looking at, a lot of cities, I should say, are looking at. And we think that Oakland can be in the lead because our project, our report on the feasibility of implementing such a program is actually ready for prime time. And we're about to bring it to the City Council.
Do you have a date for that yet?
And it's called Macro. It's called Macro. And the full report can be found on the website of Urban Strategies Council, which was the lead organization in doing the work.
Urban Council of Oakland, and I'm going there right now, folks. And actually, I'm getting the link to the report. Actually, you know what? In the interest of my guest time, I'm going to put up the URL for Oakland Strategies, Urban Strategies Council, right here in the comments section. So anybody watching this can access that URL after Ms. Grinage comment and go get the report for themselves.
Absolutely.
And so, love it, don't you? But what are your thoughts also on, let me just rephrase that entirely. This was in Oakland, but it happened in Alameda nearby. black man by the name of Molly Watkins was the focus of an arrest on body cam for, I still can't believe I'm saying this because it's a violation of First Amendment rights, dancing in the streets. The woman that made the call used a non-emergency number, and I believe, this is just me, that she deliberately used that number knowing that had she used 911, she could have been arrested for a felony. Is that a loophole that also exists in Oakland that we need to close?
You know, I'd have to do some research on that. I don't know how many. I mean, we've seen stories like,
Barbara
you know,
Quebec?
exactly, and the activity at Lake Merritt and so on, and of course we've just seen the one in Central Park in New York, where people call 911 as though something is wrong just because it's someone of a different color or a different background.
It's a black man will kill you.
It itself is an emergency, right? So, but whether calling a non-emergency number is a way to get around being tagged for an offense is something I'm really not sure about. I don't know the law about that. So I'm not sure of any, but it's an interesting question. And it's something we should look at.
Yeah. And I know you've got a very important Zoom coming up in closing. What's the next steps that we should watch out for and keep informed about?
So I think the two things that we've been talking about, we do need to keep an eye on this ballot measure for the commission. It's very important that the police union, with whom they are now meeting and conferring about this measure, is not allowed to put some poison pills in it. We've heard a lot nationwide about the power of police unions, and it's about time, because that has been the invisible story forever, and that nobody's ever been willing to talk about before. But it's a fact of life, and it needs to be acknowledged and it needs to be dealt with. So I'm hoping that this police union knows better than to try to sabotage this police measure, this police commission measure, because that would certainly confirm everyone's worst opinion about police unions. So I'm hoping that they will not confirm those low opinions, and then will somehow find a way to allow this measure to go forward as written and as adopted by the City Council. But that's something to keep an eye on for July, to see what exactly comes back to the council after the meet and confer has been concluded. And secondly, keep your eye on macro. Will the City Council find a way to fund a pilot program that provides an alternative to some low-level 911 calls that don't require police but can be handled by another agency or another organization? And will they take that money that is needed for the pilot, and will they take that from the police department budget? These are questions that are front burner questions as the city considers its budget, and will need to make final decisions about its budget. Will they be listening to the community? Will they be willing to offload some of the work of OPD onto a community-based organization that is better equipped to handle these non-emergency calls that are not involved with crime or violence, but are stress-related, crisis-related, or just interpersonal conflict? And will they allow that program, that pilot program, to be funded? And will that funding come from OPD? And these are important questions that we should be looking and to see who's leading on this on the City Council, who's going to be the champion of this program. But I think it's definitely in line with what a lot of cities throughout the country are contemplating. But we're ahead of the game because we've done the work for the last year, and we're ready to go. Fired up, ready to go.
A familiar saying from the 2012 President Obama race and presidential race. We need more of that. I'm fired up and ready to go right now, but we got to go. You got to go.
Thank you, as always. Pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure's mine, and we'll have you back. And I'm gonna have to figure out some kind of way of formalizing this. I'm thinking I have to make some arrangements. You're becoming a star here.
What can I say? As long as I don't have to join the actors union, I'll be good.
Well, okay. Hey, don't go anywhere, folks. Rashidah, don't go anywhere. I'll have you backstage, folks.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We'll be back. Zenny62, thank you for subscribing. We'll see you all later.